Major Glenn Miller, director of the U.S. Air Force Band, is missing on a flight from England to Paris, it was announced today.
The disappearance of Glenn Miller has long remained one of the most perplexing mysteries of the Second World War. On December 15, 1944, the famous American bandleader and major in the U.S. Army Air Forces vanished while en route to Paris, leaving no trace of his plane or its passengers. The Norseman aircraft, which was supposed to carry him to perform for Allied troops, never made it to its destination. For decades, the story of Miller's disappearance has been surrounded by speculation, conspiracy theories, and numerous investigations. Was it a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? Over the years, multiple theories have emerged, ranging from friendly fire to mechanical malfunction and even covert espionage. With new evidence coming to light, however, some experts believe we may be closer than ever to uncovering the truth. Join us as we delve into the final, definitive investigation that could solve one of World War II's greatest mysteries: the man behind the music. Before delving into the mystery surrounding his disappearance, it's important to recognize the significance of Glenn Miller's contributions to both music and culture. Born on March 1, 1904 in Clarinda, Iowa, Glenn Miller quickly emerged as one of the most influential figures in American music. A gifted trombonist, bandleader, and arranger, Miller's sound became synonymous with the big band era of the late 1930s and early 1940s. He is often remembered not just for his musical innovation, but for how his music came to define an entire generation's experience. Miller's rise to prominence began in the mid-1930s, when he formed his own orchestra after initially working as a sideman and arranger for other big bands. His musical style was distinctive for its smooth blend of melody, rhythm, and orchestration. His orchestra's unique sound, characterized by an upbeat yet smooth blend of horns, rhythm sections, and catchy arrangements, captivated audiences both in the United States and abroad. Some of Miller's most famous songs, such as In the Mood, Moonlight Serenade, and Chattanooga Choo Choo, became instant hits and remain iconic to this day. These songs were more than just chart toppers. They were a reflection of the optimism and energy of the era. Miller's orchestra had a distinct role in shaping the mood of the 1930s and 1940s. His sound was inextricably linked to the feel-good spirit of the era, when swing music brought joy and hope during the Great Depression. His music was a source of relief for many, giving people an outlet to escape their everyday struggles. The Miller sound became synonymous with the big band swing movement, and his songs were played across radios, in ballrooms, and even on film soundtracks, solidifying his place as a key figure in popularizing swing music. However, Glenn Miller's influence extended beyond his music. In 1942, during World War II, Miller's sense of duty led him to enlist in the Army Air Forces. His patriotic spirit was evident in his decision to serve and contribute to the war effort by providing musical entertainment for American troops. Miller's U.S. Army Air Forces Band played across military bases, boosting morale and offering comfort to soldiers stationed far from home. This service demonstrated his deep commitment to his country, making his contributions not only cultural, but also integral to the emotional support of wartime soldiers. Tragically, Glenn Miller's life was cut short when he disappeared on December 15, 1944, while traveling to entertain troops in France. His plane vanished without a trace, and his mysterious disappearance has been the subject of speculation ever since. Despite this, Miller's music and legacy have endured, continuing to influence generations of musicians and listeners alike. Today, Glenn Miller remains a central figure in American music history, and his contributions to the cultural landscape of the 20th century are still celebrated. A fateful flight. On December 15, 1944, Glenn Miller boarded a small, single-engine aircraft for what seemed to be a routine flight. But this journey would ultimately change his life, and the course of history, forever. At the time, Miller had been in Bedford, England, where he and his orchestra had been entertaining Allied forces stationed there. His band's music had become a morale booster for the troops during World War II, and Miller's contributions were deeply appreciated by those serving overseas. As the war continued to unfold, Miller's orchestra had been invited to perform in the newly liberated French capital of Paris, and Miller was asked to fly ahead of his band to prepare for the upcoming performance. The flight had originally been scheduled for the day before, but adverse weather conditions had forced its cancellation. On the morning of December 15th, however, the weather seemed to clear up just enough for the flight to proceed. Glenn Miller was eager to carry out his mission, and so he boarded a UC-64A Norseman aircraft, piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Norman Basel. Despite lingering fog and poor visibility, the aircraft took off from RAF Twinwood Farm in Bedfordshire, England, at approximately 1:55 p.m., heading toward Villacoublay Aerodrome in Paris. The weather conditions were far from ideal. Foggy skies and limited visibility made the flight especially treacherous, but at the time, the decision was made to proceed with the journey. The Norseman, a small rugged plane, was used for various military transport purposes during the war, but its single-engine design made it particularly vulnerable in poor weather conditions. As the flight progressed, there were no indications of trouble until the plane was last seen over the English Channel, a body of water that separates southern England from France. Shortly after the plane was seen, it vanished from radar screens and all contact was lost. Despite extensive search efforts by both British and American forces, no wreckage or signs of the missing plane were ever discovered. It was as though the plane had simply disappeared into thin air, leaving behind an unsolved mystery that has remained a subject of intrigue for decades. The disappearance of Glenn Miller and the aircraft he was traveling in became one of the greatest aviation mysteries of World War II. Numerous theories have emerged over the years, ranging from mechanical failure to enemy action, but no definitive answers have ever surfaced. The weather conditions that day were certainly a factor, with some speculating that the fog may have contributed to the plane's disappearance. Others have suggested that the aircraft could have crashed into the water or been struck down by enemy fire. But without any physical evidence, all these theories remain speculative. To this day, the fate of Glenn Miller remains one of the most enduring mysteries in aviation history. While his music and legacy have lived on, the unanswered questions surrounding his disappearance continue to capture the imagination of historians, aviation enthusiasts, and fans of his music. The tragic loss of this musical icon not only marked the end of an era in big band jazz, but also left an indelible mark on the wartime generation that had come to rely on his music for comfort during the dark days of World War II. Theories surrounding the disappearance. Over the years, various theories have emerged to explain what happened to Glenn Miller's plane. These theories range from mechanical failure to espionage, with some even suggesting the involvement of enemy forces. Let's explore the most prominent theories that have been proposed. Mechanical failure. One of the most widely accepted theories is that mechanical failure caused the crash. Dennis Sprague, a senior consultant to the Glenn Miller Archive, has suggested that icing on the aircraft's fuel lines and carburetor was likely the primary cause of the crash. According to Sprague, the plane was flying in extremely cold weather, which led to ice building up in the fuel system. This would have caused the engine to stall, and with the pilot unable to restart the engine, the plane would have quickly fallen into the English Channel. Sprague's theory is supported by military documents and records that detail similar incidents of icing during wartime flights. During World War II, aircraft frequently encountered extreme weather conditions, and icing was a well-known hazard, especially for small, single-engine planes like the UC-64A Norseman. The lightweight design of the Norseman would have made it particularly susceptible to damage if it were forced to make an emergency landing or crash into water. It's plausible that the lack of an engine, combined with the limited maneuverability of the plane in such conditions, led to a rapid descent into the English Channel. Furthermore, Sprague claims that the plane's structure would have disintegrated upon impact with the water, leaving no wreckage to be found, which may explain why no remains of the aircraft were ever discovered. Weather conditions and fog. Another theory that has been discussed is the role of weather conditions, particularly the fog and poor visibility that day. As mentioned, the plane's flight took off despite lingering fog and low visibility. Some experts believe that the combination of these adverse conditions could have led to disorientation or caused the pilot to lose his bearings while flying over the English Channel. The UC-64. A Norseman was not equipped with advanced navigational tools like radar, making it especially vulnerable to becoming lost in low visibility. It's possible that the crew, unable to accurately judge their position, veered off course and either ran out of fuel or crashed due to the extreme weather conditions. Enemy action and espionage. While it is considered less likely, some have speculated that Glenn Miller's plane was shot down by enemy forces, either as part of an attack or due to mistaken identity. The theory suggests that the aircraft may have been mistaken for an enemy plane, particularly in the high-stress environment of wartime Europe, where planes were often on alert. Others have even suggested the possibility of espionage, claiming that Miller's work with the U.S. Army Air Force's band could have made him a target of enemy intelligence operations. However, no evidence has ever emerged to suggest that enemy aircraft or sabotage played a role in the disappearance. Given the location of the disappearance and the lack of any corroborating reports of enemy activity in the area, this theory remains largely speculative. Mechanical sabotage or aircraft failure. Another theory that has gained some attention is the possibility of mechanical sabotage, although there is no concrete evidence to support this. Some have speculated that the crash may have been caused by intentional tampering with the plane, either by an individual with malicious intent or as part of an espionage plot. However, this theory lacks strong evidence, and investigators at the time found no indication of foul play or sabotage. Still, the idea of a deliberate mechanical failure caused by sabotage persists in some circles, especially given the high-profile nature of Miller's status within the military and the entertainment world during the war. Pilot error. A final theory to consider is that the crash may have been the result of pilot error. Lieutenant Colonel Norman Basel, who piloted the plane, was an experienced officer, but even seasoned pilots can make mistakes, particularly in challenging conditions like those that Miller's flight encountered. Pilot error could have been a factor in the loss of control or misjudgment of the aircraft's ability to continue the flight under poor weather conditions. However, Basel was highly regarded as a capable and experienced pilot, so this theory remains unlikely. Despite the various theories, the disappearance of Glenn Miller remains an unresolved mystery, and without concrete evidence, it is impossible to definitively determine what happened to the plane. Each theory offers a plausible explanation, but none can fully account for all the unknowns surrounding the incident. Weather and other conditions. Weather conditions on the day of Miller's disappearance were a critical factor in the events leading up to the crash. December 15, 1944, was a particularly cold day, with dense fog and low visibility that would have made navigating the skies extremely challenging. Reports from the time indicate that the UC-64A Norseman, the plane Miller was on, was flying at a low altitude due to the poor visibility. Flying at low altitudes, particularly in such weather, makes an aircraft more vulnerable to ice buildup on its wings and fuel lines, which is exactly what may have happened during this ill-fated flight. The temperature at the time of the flight was freezing, and as the plane flew through the cold air, the moist conditions could have caused ice to accumulate on the aircraft's wings and critical systems. Dennis Sprague, a senior consultant to the Glenn Miller Archive, has suggested that icing on the aircraft's fuel lines and carburetor might have led to a mechanical failure. The formation of ice could have obstructed the fuel supply to the engine, causing it to stall. Once the engine failed, the plane would have been unable to maintain altitude or speed, leaving the pilot with little opportunity to regain control. This would have been especially dangerous for a small, single-engine aircraft like the Norseman, which was more susceptible to a loss of power and stability in such conditions. In addition to icing, the low visibility could have led to disorientation. The fog that blanketed the region would have made it difficult for the pilot to discern their position, especially as they crossed the English Channel, an area notoriously tricky for navigation. Without modern navigation aids, the crew would have relied on visual cues to stay on course, but these would have been almost non-existent in the thick fog. Although some speculated that enemy bombers or flak from coastal defenses could have caused the crash, modern research suggests that the weather conditions and the aircraft's mechanical vulnerabilities were far more likely to have been the main contributors to the disappearance. Given the combination of extreme cold, low visibility, and the potential for ice buildup, it seems that weather played a decisive role in the tragic event that claimed Glenn Miller's life. The investigation and the evidence. In the years following Glenn Miller's disappearance, numerous investigations were launched in an attempt to determine the cause of the crash. One of the most significant investigations was conducted in 1945 by the U.S. Army Air Forces, which aimed to understand the circumstances of the loss. The inquiry initially concluded that the plane's disappearance was likely due to a combination of factors, including pilot error, mechanical malfunction, and poor weather conditions. This conclusion was based on the available evidence at the time, but the specifics of the investigation were never fully disclosed to the public, leaving many questions unanswered. Despite the investigation's findings, the lack of concrete evidence and the absence of any wreckage led to persistent speculation about what had truly happened. The official military inquiry, which focused on pilot error, mechanical failure, and weather, found it difficult to draw definitive conclusions without wreckage or more concrete evidence. With no remains of the plane or the crew to examine, the investigation relied heavily on the testimonies of those who were involved in the flight, as well as available records and conditions surrounding the disappearance. The conclusion that pilot error and weather were contributing factors was based on the known challenges that pilots faced when flying under such adverse conditions. Despite this, the case remained unsolved, leaving Glenn Miller's disappearance shrouded in mystery. In 2009, the search for answers was reignited by Dennis Sprague, a researcher and historian, who took on the task of revisiting the mystery surrounding Miller's disappearance. Encouraged by Miller's son, Stephen, Sprague launched his own investigation into the events surrounding the crash. His research uncovered a wealth of previously overlooked military documents and records, which shed new light on the incident. Sprague's investigation led him to suggest that the most likely cause of the crash was the icing of the aircraft's fuel lines and carburetor, a theory that had not been fully explored in previous investigations. Sprague's discovery of these overlooked military records, coupled with his analysis of similar crashes involving Norseman aircraft, helped solidify the theory that icing played a crucial role in the crash. Icing on the aircraft's fuel lines and carburetor would have obstructed the fuel supply to the engine, leading to a sudden engine failure. With the engine stalled, the aircraft would have been unable to regain altitude or control, leaving it vulnerable to a crash. This theory was supported by records of similar incidents involving small aircraft that were subject to severe weather conditions, such as those Miller's plane encountered that fateful day. Additionally, Sprague's investigation revealed that the weather conditions on December 15, 1944, were particularly severe, with dense fog, freezing temperatures, and low visibility. These factors would have made it difficult for the pilot to maintain orientation and may have contributed to the plane's failure to stay on course. Sprague's book, Resolved, which documents his findings, has been instrumental in shaping a new understanding of Miller's disappearance. His work has provided the most detailed explanation to date and has helped clarify the confusion surrounding the event. While the military's original investigation laid the groundwork for understanding the general causes of the crash, it was Sprague's work decades later that brought new clarity to the incident. However, despite the compelling evidence supporting the icing theory, the mystery remains unresolved, as no wreckage or definitive proof of the crash site has ever been found. Sprague's research continues to be regarded as the most thorough and convincing examination of the case, but the absence of physical evidence still leaves room for lingering doubt. Although Glenn Miller's life was tragically cut short, the investigation into his disappearance has helped keep his memory alive. His legacy, particularly his contribution to music and the morale of U.S. and Allied troops during World War II, remains a testament to his patriotism, dedication, and lasting influence on American culture. Today, Miller's music continues to inspire generations, and his work remains a central part of the big band jazz era. His songs such as In the Mood, Moonlight Serenade, and Chattanooga Choo Choo continue to be celebrated, and his story is remembered not only for the mystery of his disappearance, but also for the profound impact he had on music, entertainment, and the war effort. The disappearance of Glenn Miller remains one of World War II's most intriguing mysteries, but with new evidence, the truth behind his tragic fate is becoming clearer. While we may never have all the answers, the legacy of Miller's music and his contributions to the war effort continue to inspire. Thanks for watching, and if you found this story interesting, don't forget to like and share.